Hello and welcome to PM Personality Profile. My name is Nana Ansakwa. Now right behind me is 2 acres of land which was left by Esi Sutherland Addy, managed by the Mufra Foundation. And it's purposely for children who live in the urban areas to get close to nature, interact and be adventurous and creative. But why am I here? I am here to talk to Professor Esi Sutherland. Professor Esi Sutherland Addy. Now, this is a woman who has achieved a lot, written and edited over 50 books, members of every academic institution there is going, won so many awards. We are here to talk to this woman who has achieved, helped children to get in touch with their creativity and being Ghanaian. And that's why I'm here. And I must say I'm standing on the Sutherland Bridge. I've just named it today. Right after the break, we'll start talking and it's going to be very exciting. Who is she behind the scenes? Stay tuned. Hello and welcome again. As I said in the intro, I'm here to speak to one dynamo, thespian if I may say. She has achieved a lot, won many awards, written many books. I find it very appropriate to be sat here to talk to Professor Esi Sutherland Addy, just to find out who she actually is. I'm sure you know all her public life, but behind the public scenes, who is she? And that's why, and if I'm going to be behind, then she's going to be Auntie Esi. So Auntie Esi, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
But before I even go on, one thing that intrigued me was your name, Sutherland.
Yes.
I just want to find out, where from Sutherland?
Well, my father, Bill Sutherland, was an African American. He was a political activist, anti-colonial, civil rights, anti-war, activist. Okay. And he came to Ghana in 1953 on the recommendation of George Padmore to Dr. Nkrumah, and so that he wanted to come and make a contribution. And when he came, he met my mother, and they got married for Sutherland, and so here I am.
I see. So now you know. And I'm sure everybody been wondering, but you're shy to ask. Okay, that's great. But let me dwell on Daddy a bit. So yes. He actually came from America to come and help Nkrumah to, help him champion his cause of anti-colonialism.
Yes, he came to Ghana, but to Africa in general. Mm-hmm. So he was the headmaster at a secondary school in Chito for a bit, and then he became the private secretary of Bedema, who was the finance minister. And then he also helped to organize the various, major conferences that were held in the country for many of these anti-colonial leaders. And eventually, he went to live in Tanzania, where he worked for many years, taking the message of the anti-colonial struggle in Eastern and Southern Africa to the United States. I have to tell you that, when he left, we went to see him, when we were teenagers, my brother and my sister and I. And we used to wonder, he loved groundnut soup and so on. You make the soup, put in the fridge, and then when you wake up in the morning, the thing is gone. And we were like, who are these people who are always eating our father's food? Then we realized that, he had been housing people like Sam Nujoma and so on in his house. And it was amazing the number of people that he had worked with or lived with or whatever to help with the struggle. So that was his life. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. And so how did he meet Mom then?
Well, they apparently the New Year school, which is now many years old, was happening in Cape Coast. And I don't exactly know how, but he met her there, and that was it. It was like very, sort of, a very quick love affair and into marriage within a year.
But it seems to be two peas in a pod, because your mom is also sort of very much pro-black, pro-Ghana.
Yes, yes, she was very nationalist and Pan-Africanist in her approach. Somehow the idea of African independence was something that she really believed in, and so they did match each other in that sense, and together they brought so many people, related to so many people in Ghana, including, when Martin Luther King came for our independence, Nyerere, Nuyoma, so many, Desmond Tutu, I mean, just a whole lot of people that they related to. And so we got a chance to get a peek at some of them from time to time.
Why not?
Yeah. So they certainly believed that Africans needed to unite, first of all, and also that we had a lot to offer. And from my mother's angle, it was a cultural angle more, and my father's angle was a political, and social angle. Yeah.
I'm sure they'll be very sad to see how we are messing up today.
I know.
That's for another day. That's for another day.
Yes.
So how many kids came out of the union?
Okay, so there are 3 of us. There is me, I'm the eldest. Then the second is Ralph Sutherland, who is an architect, and his firm is Sutherland and Sutherland. And perhaps to identify it, I could say that one of his latest projects is Ashesi University.
And that's wonderful.
The design
I've
of the
been there,
Ashesi,
and
yes.
it's just fabulous.
Yes, yes. And then my sister is a lawyer, Amowi Sutherland Phillips, but she lives in the United States, in Washington State, and she has also become, first of all, she teaches courses on Africa in Whitworth College there, but she also is doing a lot of work to bring Africa to a global picture of Africa that is much more on the creative side, on showing the wonderful aspects of Africa. So she does public speaking, and she also runs an organization called Friends of Mofra, which is affiliate to Mofra Foundation in Ghana. Yes.
Let me just digress a little bit again.
Yes.
You know, you find, I mean, I speak to you and I know you're so passionate about Ghana, Africa, and Black.
Yes.
Your sister is doing the same.
Yes.
But is it that there's not enough voices or there are not enough ears? Because the reflection is not there.
Yes.
You go out there and we are very, very anti ourselves.
Yes.
But then you speak to people and they're very pro and passionate. So is it that they are not hearing or there are not enough people speaking?
I think it's both. And we have to struggle to find a channel that reaches people. There is something about us in Ghana which I've not quite gotten to the bottom of, which is somehow we have this collective amnesia, or forgetfulness around being the whole history of how we spread around the world, enslavement and so on and so forth. And we don't understand the power of having been oppressed for so long, what has happened to us, And so somehow our minds have been, we've been, as Mr. Kwanzaa, I was talking to him a few days ago, and he was saying, Esi, we've been dealt with, our brains have been dealt with, so that we don't have a strong sense of the need for us to put our own story out there, our own messages out there, and an understanding that is only when you do that you'll be respected.
I mean, just to add to what you're saying, I mean, Hitler, killed 2 million Jews.
Yes.
And they swear it's not going to happen again, and they stick together.
Exactly.
And even though they are just a handful, because they're so together, they become such a powerful force to be reckoned. And why can't we read these things and realize that, look, 400 years of slavery, it's time to say never again? But yes. Well, I've decided that
I'm not going to ask the why question, but try and do something about it. The how are we going to do it? So I think that we have to reach the young people. We have to use creativity, music, dance, drama, film, the internet. We have to try and reach the people with these things and touch their hearts. So that's what I'm about, because I if you keep on saying, you know, why, you'll end up, you know, being completely demoralized, you know. And also there are the models, you know, of Amo and Chroma, you know, Maya Angelou, or whatever. We have models, you know, of people who have tried to do something about it, and we've got to bring that back into the system. Yeah.
Good. Okay, so we're going to go to St. Monica's.
Okay. Yes.
Now, you know, in our days in school, you know, you go to Form 1 and, you know, it was almost like, you know, a crime. You know,
Yes.
it's like you've literally been sentenced. Fetch me water, do this, wake up, sweep, jump, sit, you know, up until you get to probably Form 3, and then, whew, then you become a senior. And if you're not, you know, you can do it to somebody or just say, let bygones be.
Yes.
Back then, I mean,
Yes.
did you have better structures, or you had to go through the same?
No. I mean, you were bullied and yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, they used to make the Form 1s, you know, sing these really embarrassing songs, which I will not sing on set. But, you know, things that have to do with sex and kaya people in the market and all kinds of crazy. And they make you sing it, you know, when they know that you will feel like getting into a hole and getting covered up, you know. So they make you do that. They, you know, just yeah, you know, we were bullied, and I had an experience which was a little bit different, because my mother had been a St. Monican, you know, from her childhood, and then she'd become this famous person, and so all the nuns knew her and everything, you know. So it meant that when I went to school, you know, then everybody knew, you know, and so,
attention,
oh God,
you know, things that
so,
people will get away with.
yes, and then the girls would sort of, I mean, it was like you'd get extra bullied, because in a subtle way, because they knew that, hey, you know, that sort of, and you had all this suspicion. So I had to work on getting integrated. I mean, also, because I sort of had an unconventional upbringing in a way, I wasn't the sort of person who liked following the crowd. So I had to make people understand that even though I was different, you know, I was a fun person to be with, and it took some work, you know, but we got it done. So yeah. So I left there with lots and lots of friends, especially friends from the rural areas, who I got on very well with. Yeah.
So from there, then Legon, and then Volta Hall.
No, I went to Achimota.
You came to Achimota to do sixth form.
I did
sixth
form in
Achimota.
Yes, and it was different. Or, you know, I remember being very upset with some girls, you know, who were giggling and so on, because some of the students had gone to bring a trotro, come and get their luggage. When you're in St. Monica's, everybody takes it and comes home. I mean, it's not an issue. So I was like, I was so mad. You know, I was like, why are you laughing at them? You know, I mean, why? Just because your dad has a car doesn't make you a better person. You know, so there were some things which...
Wow, back then?
Oh, yes, we had those things. Yes,
Whoa.
there were, yeah. I mean, there was a big difference between the two schools, you know, in terms of how seniors were respected and things like that. It was just different, you know, and I had been so used to the other thing. So yeah, I had to stand my ground on some things, you know. I don't like spoiled children.
Do you think if you had done maybe 1 to 6 in Achimota, you
Yes.
might have missed the fact that there are people who it's okay to board trotro?
Oh, I may not have missed it, because my mother was very down to earth and made sure that we had a keen perspective of the realities on the ground, you know. But I'm glad that I went to St. Monica's and actually went through a lot of some of these things myself. It made a big difference. It made a big difference. Yeah.
So I come to Volta Hall.
Yes, yes.
And just before we start Volta Hall, how many do you sleep a room in your time? Because I keep trying to do my research.
Well,
are you doing two, four?
No, two.
Two to a room.
Yes,
okay.
Two. Yes.
The good old days.
The good old days.
The good old days.
Yes.
So at which point did Mr. Addy come in then?
I was in second year, you know,
okay.
and I'm told by him that, you know, his friends kept telling him that, you to go, you know, that sort of thing.
You like that
and then when he came, my friends were saying, "See, you two, you know," it was like we were both being, you know. Anyway, so it was in second year, and I was president of Volta Hall at the time, and yeah, that's when we started.
That's when he started,
yes.
right?
Yes.
And a little birdie tells me that, you know, sometimes he has to come home and, you know, you haven't finished with the house chores, and he has to, you know, chip in so you finish quickly so you can.
Well, the thing was that our mom was a stickler for doing, you know, the housework, making sure that we have all these wooden floors in our house. They all needed to be polished. We needed to help. She used to have a lot of visitors, and we needed to help with the cooking. And we used to make lots of fresh orange juice and all of that. So, you know, and she did not believe. She thought our friends should come home and be with us. She was fine with that, you know. But if you wanted to go out, then we'll have to make palm soup that day, or that takes a long time. You are pounding, you are sieving, you are grinding, you are this. I mean, it was typical of her. So, I mean, there was one or two times when he came and I was responsible for polishing the floor. And I mean, our cousins and friends laughed because he was very tall, and he had to bend over and be, you know, polishing just for me to finish quickly so that we could go out. So yes, and yeah, and if you came back late, you know what she used to do is she'll start sweeping behind the door. So you have to get up and sweep, you know. So she made sure we realized that she didn't really like us going out that much, you know. But then, of course, there was campus and you could go wherever you wanted. Yeah.
So how many kids came out of the union?
There are two.
Two.
They're both married. The first one is Mrs. Dede Gauga, and the second one is Mrs. Ruth Koko Upuku. So there are two young women who came out of it.
Okay.
Yes.
Any grandkids yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yes.
Not yet. But sadly, Mr. Addy passed.
He did, indeed.
And before he passed, you were divorced.
We were. Yes, we were. Yeah.
I want to dwell on your union a bit.
Yes.
And because you are in the limelight.
Yes.
And you've started, probably when you started, you were not, well, maybe you were not so much in the limelight. Maybe Mum was known, but you could shield a bit. But this time, you know, this is Esi Sutherland herself also going and coming. How would he, because I said, you know, and the man, you know, I want my wife to be home.
Yes.
How would he handle that?
Well, he had some difficulties with it. You know, I think he was ambivalent about it because he realized what I was doing was important, but at the same time, he did not, sometimes not appreciate the way in which I tried to cope with it. You know, in other words, trying to be super mom, do both, you know, sort of make sure there's food and so on and so forth, and, you know, be out there at work till 10 p.m. or whatever, and the compromises of, you know, like we doing homework in the car or, you know, those kinds of things. He had difficulties with that sort of thing. But then I must say that as he was the head of the legal division eventually in VRA, and he, you know, getting to the mid point of his career, he was traveling all the time and so on, and I was quite glad
Probably
because
came to understand.
it wasn't my fault, Yeah, but yeah, no, I don't think that the difficulties we had were just based on that, But let me just say that it was difficult, and so at some point we decided that it was better to live apart. But we eventually, and I mean, if this is something that I really want to share, is that we eventually developed a way of having an amicable relationship in order for us to be able to look after our children and share our friends and so on and so forth. So in many cases, people didn't even know that we were actually divorced. Yeah.
That's a good advice. Stay tuned. We coming straight back. Well, hello and welcome back to this exciting conversation, my, Kokonsa conversation. So your daughters,
Yes.
are they also, bookworms?
No, I think I put them off for life.
Really?
Just with all the books and the reading and marking scripts and things, they said there's no way that they're going to teach. So they are both, but they are organizers. They're my first daughter is an events manager and she did hotel management and events management, but now she's an office manager for an up-and-coming firm, and my other daughter is also very active. They're all, she's active. She's in the choir. She acts. She does all kinds of things in the church and so on. But she works at Lincoln Community School.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And,
okay. But they just left your library and your books to you.
No, they don't like that. They like the other side. All the arts and so on and so forth, but not the books.
But I mean, you are very, well read and probably linked to every, academic institution there is going. Was that, from school, not look, this is what I want to be. I want to be an academician.
No, actually, I didn't. I didn't know that I was going to end up in the university. I felt that I would probably be doing something something related to the arts. That's what I wanted to do, but not sort of an academic. So but as I did my first degree in French and linguistics, and it was Professor Nketia,
Yes.
emeritus, who then said, look, Esi, why don't you go and do, your master's in literature and folklore and so on, since you are interested in those things, and come to the Institute of African Studies. So I thought about it and talked it over with my mom, and then I decided that that was a good idea. So I applied to, universities in the United States and was admitted to University of California at Los Angeles, and then I did French. I did literature. I did dance, and I did folklore. It was an African Studies degree with 3 concentrations. And then I came back to the university. So I went on a university scholarship and came back.
Is it not ironic to go and study African studies in America?
Well, it's one of the saddest things, and it is still true, that if you want information on Africa as a whole, the best place to do it is to go to an institution outside of this country. It is sad and ridiculous, but they've got wonderful collections of music in archives, musical archives. You could stay there for days without coming up. I know, Nana, you like these traditional things. They've got libraries to die for, documentation. I mean, you know that the film, our film archive, which but if you go to Britain, you'll get the full set, but you have to pay through your nose for it, and we haven't been able to do it. So it is the saddest thing in the world. But I mean, for example, Basel in Switzerland, if you want to know about the Basel missions and a lot about our history, the history of Equapim and all of that, that place in the Ghana, you get it, and so on. There are so many. It's sad. It is really sad. Yeah.
Why don't we value it? Because in most of us say, you know, sign kofa, abakosem, titi wubichre. So in all our, you know, proverbs and stuff, we appreciate that titi is important.
Yes.
Why don't we keep archives? Why don't we value archives? Why is there not a deliberate, you know, policy to say, listen, we need to put the history together?
Okay, there are two angles I'd like to take. The first angle is that historically, we lived our history. So every time you have an Akwesidai and you pour libation, you call all the ancestors and people know this one did this, this one did this, this one did this, this one did this. Or you have a festival, you have a procession, and like in Akwamu, somebody carries the keys to the Christian Borg Castle, somebody carries this, and we've been living our history. We didn't, in a way, need to recount it in that kind of way. I mean, I don't know if you know, but in Dagbon, the Damba Festival, one night is dedicated to the court historians. They just recite the history of Dagbon throughout the night. It's part of the rites. Okay, so what the missing link is between having abandoned those ways of doing it and not having taken up the other way of then documenting and archiving it. And then also there's been this whole culture of giving ourselves the impression that we need to shun certain aspects of our culture. For example, if you look at traditional religion, it is in the shrines that you have the philosophies, you have the pharmacology, you know, you have various aspects of what we would call really intellectual, you know, and esoteric material in those places. Now, the minute you say, okay, these people are devilish, let's take all this thing and dump it in the toilet, or let's take all this thing and burn it, or whatever, then you lose it completely. Okay, so the attitude that we've taken has not helped at all, you know, and this is what that's why places like the Institute of African Studies exist, to try and get over those attitudes and go and meet with the experts who are actually on the ground, the few that are left, and get them to share, you know, because they also have become, you know, if you don't respect them, then they also become, they'd rather die with the information than have somebody come and disrespect them. And that's how come when Europeans or, I don't know, or Japanese, it doesn't matter who comes to them, shows them respect, they tell them. And then you have to go there and learn about it. Yes.
What a shame.
Yeah.
What a shame.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Mom a bit, because I like her dream about having a children park in every city or urban area, and we thought that, you know, please, this is elitist. What are you talking about? But it's coming to hit us in the face.
Yes, yes. Well, you know, she loved children, and she believed that children should be, I mean, we should learn from children. And because she was in theater, she thought that children were the greatest dramatists in the world. Because I'm sure you've watched a child, you know, leave a child in an empty space. And before you know where you are, the child will have talking to somebody, you don't know who it is. They will create a character, they will create a scenario, they will have a fun time, they'll get into a world of fantasy. And she believed that if you wanted to be a good playwright, you should actually interact with children. So it's through the drama and teaching, you know, that she came to this conclusion. But she also realized, she felt that school, formal school was, you know, taking everything away from our children.
Wow.
It was taking away their creativity. It was taking away their ability to learn their own languages. It was taking away their self-confidence. She was, even though she was working in the school system, she really felt that the way that we were doing it was not on, and that we were going to create, people, I mean, adults who didn't have any sense of any self-confidence, were not able to engage with Europeans one-to-one and so on. So it was also that passion of getting us to have confident citizens that made her feel that, you need to look at that. Then she also realized that being cooped up in a classroom just took away the kids' ability to be themselves and to create. And she felt they needed this outdoor space. Also, traditionally, there in the evenings when the moon was out, there was storytelling, there was ampe tuma to this and that. People were doing all kinds of things out there. Different age groups were all doing it. So the whole idea of using the outdoor space to express ourselves was something that fascinated her. So she really felt that, every city should have a green space. Apart from that, she also felt that we were getting away from understanding our environment and we're ruining our environment. And so the children needed to engage with a green environment. So that's why she came up with these ideas. And she tried to set one up in the city of Accra, in Kumasi, Amakum. If you go there, I hear it's full of armed robbers or something. It's just all overgrown with snakes and armed robbers and all that. But that was that. And then there was one in Chichiria in the eastern region. And so the whole idea was that you could have, however small your community, you should, have such a space. And so she put that together. There were mobile libraries, mobile, science laboratories and so on, so that even if, you couldn't have a science laboratory in your school, you could get on board the mobile laboratory. So those are some of her ideas. And unfortunately, because after she left the commission, somehow there was this feeling that, oh, these are prestige projects and they should be dropped, and it's such a pity. So we are really, I mean, the children's park, what is named after her in the Ridge Park, she fought tooth and nail because people tried to come and build a casino there. They tried to do all kinds of things. And she just, so, people were really terrified of her, actually, because it's like, that woman is wild about this park. So, when she died all of a sudden, President Rawlings or Chairman Rawlings at the time, made the decision to
name the park after her, which is very befitting. But, very recently, Professor Nana Opoku-Agyeman, the Minister of Education, now she said something, and it's just, even though she summed it up, it's exactly what your mum was thinking, that by the time you go through our schooling system, you become diseducated.
Yes.
And it's exactly what your mum is saying. That
absolutely.
What you do, you're literally killing the child.
Absolutely.
And I think they need to come back again and find another way, because this, your confidence after leaving school, your knowledge about environment, your creativity, and it's, the result is all around us today.
Exactly. And she was a stickler for, she felt that we need to be able to express ourselves. I mean, she could speak Fanti perfectly, write it. Every play that she did, or almost every play that she did, has an Akan version, a script there. She and then she spoke this marvelous English, and some of her, her students, used to sort of tease us, later on. They used to say, I'm from Fijai and Achimota School, and so she used to say something like, under the greenwood, 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 under the greenwood tree, or something like that. And every time they see me, they do it. I mean, but she was really, she believed that language was very well, but also that, to be able to express what is inside you, you really have to be able to come across. So everything that she wrote, she took a lot of care with it. I mean, her garbage, her what you call waste paper basket was always full of she was never satisfied. You could find, you know, manuscripts that she had rolled up and just thrown away and started all over again to do it. And all of that went into in passing it on to young people. Yeah.
I see, I see.
Yeah.
The other thing, you know, listening to you,
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of tradition, bring back tradition, but the conflict between religion and tradition now, should there be a conflict or can we merge?
I think that if we really understand that what you need to go for is the fundamentals of a religion, then you must be able to separate that from the culture of the people who brought the religion to you. So, you know, if the people from the desert brought us a religion where we're all, you know, covered up from our noses down, the desert, you know, if you've been in Senegal or somewhere like that, you realize that the sand can really hit you on the cheeks and all that. You know, you don't have to do that here in order to believe in Islam. And for the same reason, you know, there's absolutely no reason why we should have taken lock, stock, and barrel everything that comes from Europe, you know, because we are taking on Christianity.
The pastor wears a collar, you know, so...
I mean, you know, all of those things, and then take on the entire culture and have this feeling that everything that we have has to be abandoned. So, I mean, I really admire all those in religious practice who are trying to convey these things, and I mean, if you see African Americans celebrating, you know, African colors and so on, and culture, you know, and on particular days, or, you know, the way they dress and so on, or you know, we have Bishop Sapong saying, you know, at the height of the mass, why don't we play the glorious of our instruments, which is the etumpai and fronton from and so on, you know, to show the greatness of God in our own way. So, you know, and then of course there are all these, there's a lot of course that's going on which is trying to counter this, but there's also a lot that is just, you know, sort of selling out for no reason. Yeah.
There shouldn't be any conflict there.
No, there shouldn't. There shouldn't at all. I mean, and I know there are you know, there are some, how shall I say, controversial areas. You know, they are controversial. Like being a woman, there's this controversial area of just because you are in a you know, you want to get married in a church, then you have to wear certain kinds of clothes. I mean, you know, when I got married, I had, well, I guess because I was abroad, but I had they used cloth to make an embroidered outfit for me. And many people, I mean, were saying, oh, this is unusual, but it isn't. I mean, why should you know what I mean? And there are various things like, you know, so libation, and so we have difficulties, but, you know, we don't have difficulties in reading, you know, parts of the Bible where it's just a list of people's ancestors, you know, all the way down. I mean,
Zebedee, son of Zebedee, and father of Zebedee, and grandfather of Zebedee.
I mean, and a libation does that. It tells you whose son is who has done well for the community, what your history is, and so on. And I think that you could take that form and still not lose out on your Christianity. So I know it's controversial, but, you know, really, we really have to look closely at what has been brought us and pick what we know to be the fundamentals of it. Yeah.
I'm going to go for a break. When we come back, we find out how such a principled woman was able to hold ministerial positions, knowing their perception around ministers. Stay tuned.
God.
Well, just before the break, we were trying to find out how Professor Esi Sutherland Addy, such a principled woman, believes in the Ghanaian, believes in life, and hold a ministerial position. Now, I'm asking this because the perception out there is the total opposite. Ministers are known, I'm not saying known to be anti-Ghanaian, want to fill their pockets. That's the perception. I'm not saying that's who they are. So I'm just trying to find out how, Auntie Esi, you were able to hold, two ministerial positions, education and culture and tourism.
Yeah.
You have to sign some contract, and obviously it's not right. So how were you able to do it?
Well, I don't know actually, but let me just say this. In spite of the perception, the Rawlings PNDC period, there were lots of us who were in there because we believed in Ghana. There were lots of idealistic people. Some of them couldn't, stick and went off and so on. I mean, and all that. But it was a period where idealists thought that there was an opportunity to do something different, to make a change, to and so on. So I was invited in on that kind of basis. Now, luckily for me also, my boss, for much of the time was Dr. Mohammed Ben Abdallah, playwright, just a very, very creative human being. And so we were able to do, because we were in an area of creativity, we were able to do a lot that we could get away with, and to try and make a difference. So that happened. Now in education, I was deputy for higher education. Okay. Now this was a much more a much more complex area in a way, because there were problems that needed to be serious problems that needed to be solved. There were no teachers, there was no equipment and so on and so forth. So we had to work out how are we going to have an educational system that is able to cater to the ordinary person and all that. So again, I was focused, on making a change for the child in the system. And my way of doing it was to engage with the technocrats and say, look, this is what we want to do. You take this and do it. You take this. I delegated things to people and then try to coordinate it. And so we were working out new policies and so on. And they were going home at people don't believe will work. They were going home at 10 p.m., whatever. If we had to meet, the World Bank or whatever, we did our homework. We did our homework thoroughly so that you could meet them foot to foot. And then, of course, we had this very difficult constituency, which was the higher education, the universities, the professors, and so on. And so you had to be on the ball. As far as corruption was concerned, I think that in our time, Mrs. Vida Yeboah, late Mrs. Vida Yeboah, and the rest of us, got this reputation as being this difficult women, that you couldn't handle. We didn't want to, we would not see you. If you were a contractor, you couldn't come into my office. I would say, look, if your file is here, I stay here, I will sign. If there's nothing wrong with your file, I will sign it and you will go. So after a while, they realized that, there was no need to do that. One or two of them got through by telling people that they were my uncles or whatever. And I remember one of them coming in and trying to get me to change, to abrogate a contract and change it into his favor. And what he asked me, Nawara, Mama said, Wadana, I mean, have I asked you to come and sleep in your house? Why are you asking? He was very upset and very embarrassed. But that sort of thing, you cannot, I mean, what's the meaning of that? And also people used to come and try to get you to sign papers when you're like about to travel and so on. I learned all those tricks. You don't do that, because if you don't take care, you get yourself into trouble, and your signature will be there, and the person who brought the thing will be some anonymous person and so on. So, I mean, I always also knew that at 1 o'clock on any day, my name could be called and I'd be out, So I said, look, let me do my best. And when I'm out, I'm out. So I lived on campus. I never left. I still taught some courses. And I just went back, when I finished my 7 years, I just went back, So I didn't see it as a be-all and end-all. I saw it as an opportunity to do something and make a change. So I was very grateful to be able to do new policies, get money for the system, and then I left. Yeah.
Now that's one advice that I think the newcomers should take, because sometimes I think the fear is that if I leave here, then what next?
No, no,
You know,
no.
so
There's plenty ahead of you. And once you've been a minister and you've done your work well, people are always willing to be supportive. I want that to be clear. You know, you are most unlikely to be left high and dry. You know, and if you live a normal life, you know, so that you don't get used to things that you don't normally have, then when you leave, that's all, you know. So everybody, I mean, one of the things I think that I was very pleased with was that people will say, but you see, you haven't changed. And I said, why should I change? Yeah, you know, yeah.
But as you see, I can't come here and not talk about books.
Yeah.
Mom wrote books.
Yes.
And she's passed
Yes.
on
Yes.
to you, even though you were not able to pass it on. So this is by Voice in the Forest.
Yes.
And this is by, obviously, Esi Sutherland. Illustrated by Ralph.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, is Ralph an artist then?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then, I hear that's your
This
sister.
is Amowi. Yes, she was the first child to play the part of the boy. Actually, it's supposed to be a boy in this play called Tehinta, which many people know. And so so that's her when she was about 9. Yeah.
This is my favorite. And I'm sure I don't need to tell you why this is my favorite. It says Ghana where beads speak. And I think it's about time we showcase things like this, because you normally find this in, you know, the UK library or an American library, but not here, where, you know, there's a documentary of, you know, really colorful books. What inspired this? And this was written by Esi Sutherland Addy, Ama Ata Edu, and Kati Dagadu.
Yes, yes.
What inspired this?
Well, you know, UNESCO had a project where, why don't, you know, they said, like, why don't we revive the bead industry as part of, you know, changing, trying to get people a livelihood and so on. But when they finished, they said, well, you know, this is a dry report. And they asked us to come on board so that we could present beads back to Ghanaians in an interesting way. Because a lot of people don't know what the history of the beads, they also don't know what they are used, what the meaning is, how they are made, you know, and that sort of thing. And Amate Du, who is our foremost writer today, did poetry on the beads in the book. And Kati was the designer, you know, who helped us to put the thing together. And she's so knowledgeable about beads. So it's a combined effort of 3 Ghanaian women. And this is the first time that a tabletop book about beads has been done by Ghanaians for the Ghanaian market. So we're very pleased.
Is it out on the market for sale?
It is. It is, yes.
What would you get one to buy?
There's a place called Sun Trade, where they sell the books, and then you also have them from the Foundation for Contemporary Art, that is at the Du Bois Center. Those are the 2 main places where they are being sold, and there are some in some of the hotels as well. Yeah.
You know, you go and buy beads and they say, oh, like this is the old one.
Yes.
This is the new one.
Yes.
What's the difference between this is the old one? Is it how it was made, or is it really, you know, the old one?
No, some of them are old, you know, because they've
I know
been
yours
traded.
is the old one.
Mine are
Yeah,
old,
I mean,
yes.
I can tell it's the old one. But is
Yeah.
it the old one because of how they made it, or is it the old one because it has been in the world for...
No, some of them have been in the world for a long time. And some of them are new versions, you know, of the old. But for example, you are wearing a bottom in the middle of this, and this bottom is probably one of the older ones that you're wearing, and the ones next to it are newer versions, you know. So it's, but you know, for us it was just the wonder of taking this things. Some of the beads are you know, hundreds of years old, as well as some that are being made this minute, and they all are part of our creative culture. Yeah.
And I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
It should probably be in schools, isn't it? It should be in schools. Another one which I think is very important, you know, is this book.
Yes.
You know, a collection of essays
Yes.
and works by African scholars,
Yes.
all put together. So basically you pick a book up and, you know, flip into countries and just read about it.
Yeah, well, it's more about themes. So it's population, language and society, culture, development, economics, history, religion, music, dance, everything. And it's a textbook. Because we've been doing African studies for about 50 years or more, and we didn't have a textbook. So this was, the essays in here have been written by people who have been teaching African studies for many years, and Professor Tichua Menu and I put it together, did an introduction, and also added the speech that Kwame Nkrumah made on the opening of African studies. That set an agenda, for the way that we should be studying ourselves. So it's a book. It's something that even if you're not in school, you find it interesting to read.
If I was to go through your awards, I
Yeah.
would need 2 more programs to go through her awards and everything. But I want one book and one award that's very dear to your heart. Which book and which award that's very dear to your heart? You wake up in the morning and think, you know what, I don't mind winning this again.
I don't know if there's one, but there's this book called Women Writing Africa, which has won an award. It's part of a series of books by African women scholars, and it has the words of women from West Africa, from all over West Africa. This took, like 10 years to do, and a collaborative work that I feel very proud of. There's also this book called The Legacy of Esi Sutherland, which we're very happy to do. But I'm
Difficult
happy
to
with
choose,
yeah. As far as awards
and
are concerned,
yeah.
I think Winneba. I got an honorary doctorate from Winneba. That was fighting to get Winneba established, and that was recognized, University of Education at Winneba. So that's one. And then I got a very curious award from the College of Preceptors. I know it sounds really sort of old age. Actually, when they gave the award, there were all these trumpets and things in England. But it's the teachers. It's a special organization of teachers in Britain, and that award, and then was great. Yeah.
Well, Auntie Esi, thank you very much. It's been wonderful.
Yeah.
Before I go, I'm going to take my cameras and go and see the resting place of Mr. and Mrs. Sutherland. Probably the first time you guys are ever going to see some staging. Auntie Esi, but thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
And folks, until I come to you next week with a different personality, have a beautiful week, and thanks for watching.